Let's start by just talking about the causes of malnutrition in the developing world. What's your sense of some of the root causes?
So first, it's important to unpack malnutrition. There are three broad kinds of malnutrition. What most people think of right away is undernutrition, especially not enough calorie intake or enough calorie and protein intake. And the core problem there is people simply not being able to afford a decent diet. So the core cause of undernutrition is poverty. It's that we produce ample calories and protein in the world to feed everybody adequately, but we have a hard time ensuring that everybody can afford to access enough protein and energy. So that's really a distributional issue that's rooted in the poverty of about 1 billion or 2 billion people that leads to several hundred million at any given time, 800 or 900 million being undernourished.
So because people are too poor, the distribution networks aren't set up to move the food to where it would need to be in order for them to be nourished.
That's right. So you and I get hungry, we whip out our credit card and we go to the grocery store, and when that happens enough, the grocery store owner calls up a distributor and says, I need more food delivered here. And because there's commercial demand, it induces a flow. Well, poor people simply don't have the commercial demand to be able to induce the same sort of flow response. So there winds up not being enough food in their neighborhoods simply because they can't afford it. It's supply and demand. But the second kind of malnutrition that we need to worry about, and it's a growing share, is obesity and overweight. Now that too can ironically have its roots in undernutrition, in particular the undernutrition of pregnant women. So there's a hypothesis called the Barker hypothesis in nutrition that the stress felt in utero by a fetus can change its metabolism in ways that means it becomes hyper efficient in processing. So a child who experiences nutritional stress in utero or in the early postnatal stage as an infant can develop a metabolism that will take in energy and store it as body fat at a rate that you and I might not. And so obesity can in fact be a response to early childhood undernutrition stress. And obesity and overweight is a growing problem. We usually think about it as a byproduct of overeating, and that's certainly the dominant source of obesity and overweight among middle and upper class households all over the world and in the United States. But there is an emerging obesity problem even in low-income countries that has its roots in nutritional stress faced by pregnant women and their fetuses. The third kind of malnutrition that we need to worry about is micronutrient malnutrition. Not enough vitamins and minerals. So I get adequate protein, I get adequate energy, I can maintain a healthy lifestyle, except that I don't get enough vitamin A, so my eyesight gradually deteriorates. Or I don't get enough iodine, so my brain doesn't form properly as a young child. This is why we iodize salt in the United States, to prevent goiter and cretinism. So iodine deficiency is the leading cause of preventable brain damage in the world. And it's a simple fix. Iodize salt to make sure everybody has access to iodized salt. We have no iodine deficiency problems. But for the same reasons food doesn't flow everywhere because poor people can't demand it, you have the same problem with things like iodized salt.
To what extent is it demand versus knowledge? I mean, are some people not eating sufficient nutrients just because they don't know what to eat? They just lack the education?
Well, a problem as complicated as malnutrition obviously has multiple causes. There's not a single answer. Knowledge is an issue, especially around micronutrient deficiencies. You and I have a natural physiological response to insufficient calories. We start to feel hunger pangs. You know, we feel it in our belly that our body's telling us, go out, get calories. But your body doesn't give you that signal about selenium or zinc or vitamin D. But your body needs those vitamins and minerals every bit as much as it needs the calories. So lacking the physiological signal that hits us in the head like a sledgehammer some days, people need to be very diligent and informed about dietary choice. So education and knowledge is important, in particular for the micronutrient deficiency part, a little bit for the obesity and overweight part so that people understand how much they can take in and balance out energy expenditure with energy intake. But it's really mainly the micronutrient side for good health. That said, micronutrient malnutrition is about a lot more than just people not making wise dietary choices. mineral and vitamin-rich foods are more expensive than staples. So think of a healthy salad full of lots of different kinds of vegetables or fresh fruits, animal source foods, so meats and milk and fish and things.
More
are
expensive than rice and beans. Right?
much more expensive than rice and beans and cassava. So poor people commonly can't afford the dietary diversity that brings with it adequate mineral and vitamin to ensure that they have adequate micronutrients.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't feel like I have the education to figure out what micronutrients I need, but I think just eating a diverse diet from a number of different sources in the
That's
first
exactly
world
right.
tends to
Exactly.
cover
A
that.
diverse diet, and you're fine.
Yeah.
And there are obviously some climatic and other geographic limits. So some soils are just naturally deficient in particular minerals. So for example, iodine comes from seawater ultimately. So people who live in inland mountainous areas, the soils just aren't going to have iodine, so it doesn't come up in the crops. So the only way to get iodine into their diets is to insert it. And we do that typically by putting iodine, for example, in irrigation water in far western China. Very effective at producing adequate iodine intake for families.
Or just putting it in salt, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but you have to find these sorts of either means of fortifying post-harvest, as we do with salt, or our milk is fortified with vitamin D, our breads are commonly fortified with iron and other things. Or increasingly, plant breeders are developing new methods of what they call biofortification, putting directly into the plant genetic material means typically proteins that will express more mineral and vitamin in a given plant so that you can still rely on a staple. People can still just be eating millet or sorghum or maize or rice, but now they're getting a higher intake of mineral and vitamin to combat the problem.